we see you.
There's a rule that's been passed around in whispers for years. On forums, in late-night threads, nobody can ever find again the next morning. If you ever see a warning that tells you not to look at the sky, don't ask why. Just listen. I used to think that was just internet folklore. A scary story with no source, no proof, no name behind it. Then one Thursday night, at 8:17 p.m., every device in my apartment started screaming at once, and the message on the screen wasn't folklore anymore. This is the story of the night. The sky stopped being something we looked at and became something that started looking back. My name is Russell, and I need you to understand something before we start. I followed every rule. I did everything right. It still wasn't enough. Chapter 1, the first alert section. 1.1, the first emergency message. The first emergency alert arrived at 8:17 p.m. on what had been the most unremarkable Thursday of my life. I was sitting alone in my apartment, half watching a documentary I'd already stopped caring about, phone in hand, scrolling through nothing in particular. The weather forecast that morning had promised clear skies. Traffic outside moved the way it always did. The world felt exactly the way it always felt. Quiet, predictable, a little boring. Then every single device in my apartment went off at once. My phone screamed first, that sharp, invasive emergency tone that cuts through everything and makes your heart stutter before your brain has even registered what's happening. A second later, my television interrupted whatever was playing with the exact same sound. Then my tablet, then my laptop. The noise was so sudden and so overwhelming that I nearly dropped my phone entirely, and for a split second I told myself it was a weather warning. A tornado maybe, a chemical spill, or just another routine test of the emergency broadcast system that would vanish in 30 seconds and leave me vaguely annoyed. I'd seen those before. Everyone had. But when I looked at the screen, something cold settled in my stomach and didn't move. The message was unlike anything I had ever seen. Emergency alert, do not look at the sky. Seek immediate shelter. Close all curtains and window coverings. Do not observe the sky under any circumstances. No explanation. No government logo. No agency identification. No mention of weather. No mention of a specific threat. Nothing that could tell me what I was actually supposed to be afraid of. Just those words, locked in capitals, staring back at me from every screen in the room. I read them 3 times, then a 4th. The message didn't change. And then I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was so completely group of teenagers crossed the road with shopping bags, talking and laughing like nothing in the world was wrong. Completely, entirely normal. Yet behind me, my television still displayed the warning in silent, unwavering capital letters. I grabbed my phone and opened social media, looking for answers. The servers were already struggling under the weight of everyone doing exactly the same thing. Pages loaded slowly, videos refused to play, feeds moved almost faster than I could read them. Thousands of people had received the same alert, and screenshots were flooding every platform within minutes. The theories came fast. Some people thought it was a hack. Others said it was a military exercise. A few were convinced it was an elaborate marketing stunt. Nobody actually knew anything, but beneath all the noise, beneath the jokes and conspiracy theories and confident declarations, there was an undercurrent of something else, something that felt a lot like genuine unease. I called Aaron. He picked up immediately. "Tell me you got that alert too." "Yeah," he said. His voice had a quality I didn't recognize right away. Then I placed it. He sounded careful, like a man choosing his words with more attention than the situation seemed to call for. "You looked outside yet?" I asked. "I'm looking outside right now." A pause, long enough to notice. "Don't do that," I laughed, but it felt different this time. "What are you talking about?" "I don't know." His voice dropped slightly. "But something feels wrong. Here's the thing about Aaron. He was the least paranoid person I'd ever met. The kind of guy who read the methodology section of studies before sharing them, who stayed calm in situations that sent everyone else spiraling. In years of friendship, I had never once heard him say something felt wrong without being able to tell me exactly what it was and why. He sounded genuinely disturbed. "What happened?" I asked, and this time I wasn't laughing. Question before it even finished landing. I looked away. "Aaron, what did you see?" I said I don't know. The line went quiet. Neither of us filled the silence, and I found I didn't want to. Outside, the street looked exactly the same as it had 5 minutes ago, and somehow that had stopped being reassuring. Then my television flickered. The emergency warning disappeared from the screen, and for one brief hopeful moment, I thought it was over, that someone somewhere had pushed a button, sent the all clear, and we'd all go back to our ordinary Thursday and laugh about this tomorrow. Instead, the screen turned black. A low static hiss filled the room. Then my laptop, then my tablet, then my phone. Every screen, every device, black, static, nothing. Outside, a car slammed on its brakes so hard I heard it from inside my apartment. Someone shouted. Then another voice screamed, not in surprise, but in the specific, breathless way people scream when they see something their mind isn't prepared for. I moved toward the window without thinking. Not enough to look up, just enough to see the street below. The people walking had stopped, all of them. They stood absolutely still, heads tilted back, staring at something above them with the kind of fixed, total attention that leaves no room for anything else. They weren't checking their phones. They weren't looking at each other. Whatever had captured them completely. The static grew louder. Aaron was still on the line. I could hear his breathing, shallow and fast, and I realized I hadn't said a word in almost a minute. Then he whispered, barely audible, 4 words that I have not been able to stop hearing since. "Something's wrong with the sky." And before I could ask what he meant, before I could say anything at all, the call went dead. Section 1.2. Something wrong with the broadcast. Dead air. Outside, the city sounded different. Fewer engines, fewer voices. Even the dogs had gone quiet, as though something unseen had settled over the streets and pressed every ordinary sound out of them. I picked up my phone again, hoping the network had come back. The emergency alert was gone, replaced by a black screen crawling with faint moving lines, the kind of interference you'd expect from an old broadcast signal bleeding through somewhere it shouldn't be. A small symbol appeared near the bottom corner for just a moment, then vanished before I could make sense of it. The shape felt almost familiar, the way a word feels when it's on the tip of your tongue, recognizable and completely wrong at the same time. Then the static cut out entirely. For one suspended second, the apartment was perfectly silent. Then the television flickered back to life. A news anchor appeared behind a desk. He looked normal at first: suit, tie, studio lighting, but something about him was off in a way I couldn't immediately name. His movements were slightly delayed, video and audio drifting just far enough apart to feel uncanny. He opened his mouth several times before any sound came out, and when it finally did, only one sentence made it through. "Do not look at the sky tonight." It repeated immediately. Then the anchor vanished, swallowed by black static once more. I waited for more evacuation routes, emergency shelters, a map, anything with actual instructions. Nothing came. A full minute passed before the broadcast returned. Same anchor, same warning, same strange hesitation before speaking, like a man choosing words under duress. It didn't feel like a public safety announcement. It felt like someone forcing a signal through a door that was being held shut from the other side. I grabbed my keys and stepped into the hallway. Several neighbors were already outside their apartments, clustered in small groups with the particular energy of people trying very hard to appear calm. Mrs. Dalton, from across the hall, kept asking if this was some kind of cyber attack. A younger couple near the stairwell argued in low, urgent voices about leaving the city entirely. But it was the older man by the elevator that stopped me. He stood apart from everyone else, eyes fixed on the floor, quietly repeating the same 4 words to himself over and over. Do not look up. Alert itself hadn't quite managed. A phone rang somewhere down the corridor. Nobody answered it. Then the elevator doors slid open on their own, revealing an empty car with its emergency speaker crackling softly. A voice came through, distorted almost beyond recognition, buried under so many layers of static that we had to lean in just to catch pieces of it. Most of it was unintelligible, but 3 words came through clearly enough. Stay away from windows. That was enough for me. I went back inside and locked the door. The apartment felt different now, heavier, the air carrying a faint electric charge that raised the hair on my arms and made the silence feel pressurized, like the moment before a storm breaks. I closed every curtain and checked every window twice. It didn't entirely help. A strange glow kept leaking through the fabric at irregular intervals, subtle enough that I could almost convince myself I was imagining it, except that it pulsed, rhythmically and slow, like a lighthouse beacon shining from somewhere simultaneously impossibly far away and far too close. I forced myself away from the curtains and opened my phone. The internet had come back briefly, and new posts were flooding in. Videos uploaded just minutes earlier showed crowds in the streets pointing their phones upward before the recordings cut off abruptly. Mid-frame, mid-second, like someone had reached in and stopped them. Several accounts claimed aircraft had disappeared from radar. Others reported lights moving strangely behind the cloud cover. Government agencies had gone completely silent. Every rumor contradicted the last, theories colliding and canceling each other out. But buried inside all of them, consistent across every post from every city, was one shared detail nobody could explain. Nobody knew what was happening, and whatever it was happening everywhere at once. A new emergency notification hit my screen. Unlike the first alert, this one had additional text beneath the warning header. Warning, broadcast integrity compromised. Do not trust unauthorized visual transmissions. And below that, a timer, counting down from 30 minutes. No explanation, no source, no indication of what the countdown was measuring or what would happen when it reached 0. My hands were trembling slightly as I watched the numbers fall. Each one I was still trying to process it when the light came. A flash exploded at the edges of the curtains. Pure white, total, lasting less than a second, but powerful enough to bleach the entire room in the time it takes to blink. My body moved before my brain did. I was already halfway to the window, hand reaching for the curtain, when the memory of the warning caught up with me and stopped me cold. Do not look at the sky. I stepped back. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. Then, from somewhere outside screaming, not one voice, dozens of them, rising all at once, and they were getting closer. Section 1.3. People start looking up. The screams outside multiplied. At first, they came in scattered bursts, one from down the street, another from the alley, a third somewhere above me. Then, like a wave finding its shape, they merged into a single, sustained cry of panic that bounced off the apartment buildings and filled the air with something I hadn't felt before, something ancient, something warning me to stay very, very still. I stayed frozen beside the window. Every instinct told me to look. Every warning told me not to. The emergency countdown on my phone kept ticking downward. 23 minutes, 22, 21, steady and indifferent, like it didn't understand what it was counting toward. Nobody did. Another flash bled through the curtains. Brighter this time, the fabric glowed white for a brief, horrible second before darkness swallowed everything again. Then came the sound of running feet, dozens of them, all at once, all moving in different directions like they couldn't agree on which way was safe. I carefully pulled back the edge of the curtain just enough to see the street below without exposing my eyes to whatever was above. People were everywhere. Some were running, some were shouting, but some were simply standing still, and those were the ones I couldn't stop watching. The people around her noticed. Several screamed at her to stop. One man grabbed her by the shoulders, and for a moment I thought he might actually pull her back from whatever edge she'd reached. Then he looked up too. Both of them went completely still. Statues in the middle of a living street. Cars swerved around them. People rushed past. Neither reacted. They just stared upward, faces tilted, eyes fixed on something I couldn't see from my angle. What destroyed me wasn't the stillness. It was their expressions. They didn't look terrified. They looked fascinated, mesmerized, like they had stumbled onto something impossible and beautiful and could not bring themselves to look away. A loudspeaker crackled somewhere nearby, and an emergency vehicle rolled through the intersection below me, its recorded message looping on repeat. Remain indoors. Do not observe the sky. Close all windows immediately. The recording sounded rushed, almost desperate, like whoever made it had been working against a clock they weren't sure they'd beat. The vehicle passed directly beneath my building. That's when I noticed the driver. He was wearing a blindfold. I blinked, looked again. Still there. A second person sat beside him, navigating by voice. Both of them deliberately turned away from the windshield. If the people tasked with keeping us safe couldn't afford to see what was out there, then this was not a hoax. A notification lit up my phone. Live emergency feed available. Against everything telling me not to, I opened it. The stream showed a government briefing room. Harsh fluorescent lighting. Exhausted officials clustered behind a podium like they'd been there for days. One man began reading from a prepared statement, his voice flat and controlled. We are currently experiencing a global atmospheric anomaly. The video glitched. His face warped, pixelated, then snapped back. We repeat, do not look at the sky. Another glitch. Worse this time. For a fraction of a second, something appeared in the space behind him. Tall, dark, its shape wrong in a way that made my eyes refuse to hold on to it. Then it was gone. The official kept speaking as if nothing had happened. We understand the request may seem unusual. Compliance is essential. The feed cut out. No questions. No further explanation. Just a blank screen and the wait face turned upward. The dog never stopped pulling. The man never moved again. I checked social media. Most platforms had already gone quiet. The few posts still appearing were horrifying in how consistent they were. People from different countries, different time zones, describing identical events, identical warnings, identical disappearances. A video from Australia ended abruptly when the person filming accidentally tilted their camera toward the sky. Just cut. A live stream from Germany showed hundreds of people standing frozen in a public square, every face pointing in the same direction, every expression identical. Then one final post appeared before the feeds stopped refreshing altogether. 7 words, no context, no username I recognized. Whatever it is, it's getting closer. At that exact moment, every light in my apartment flickered once, twice, and went out. Darkness took the room, then the street, then the entire skyline, block by block, until the city I'd lived in my whole life was nothing but black shapes against a slightly lighter black sky. No electricity, no movement, no sound at all. For several seconds, the world simply held its breath. Then something enormous shifted above the city. Not a sound exactly, more like a pressure, a displacement. The feeling of something very large deciding it was done waiting. And for the first time that night, with absolute certainty, I understood. The warning had come too late. Chapter 2. The Sky Behaves Wrong Section 2.1. The first visual distortion. The darkness lasted less than a minute. It felt much longer. When the lights finally came back, they didn't return all at once the way power usually does after an outage. That sudden, reassuring flood of electricity snapping everything back to normal. Instead, they flickered weakly across the city, illuminating some streets while leaving entire blocks completely dark. a patchwork of light and shadow that made no sense by any electrical logic I knew. My phone buzzed. For one brief, stupid moment, hope surged through me. Maybe Aaron was finally calling back. Maybe someone in authority had actual answers. Instead, the screen showed a single text from an unknown number. 3 words, no punctuation, no context. Don't trust it. I typed back immediately, "Who is this?" and watched the message sit there, unsent. Network unavailable. The signal bars were completely gone, as if the phone had simply forgotten what they were for. Outside, the street had gone unnaturally quiet. Many of the people who'd frozen earlier were still exactly where they'd been, same posture, same upturned faces like the city had been paused mid-breath. Cars sat abandoned in intersections. No wind, no voices. A place that should have been alive, rendered into something closer to a photograph of itself. Then I caught movement. A young woman emerged from the apartment building across the street, flashlight in hand, eyes fixed deliberately on the ground in front of her. She was following the warnings. She'd heard them, and she was being careful. And for a few seconds I felt something close to relief, watching her proof that at least some people were still making rational decisions. Then her flashlight beam bent. I frowned and leaned closer to the glass. My first instinct was to explain it away. A reflection, a trick of the wet pavement, some quirk of the angle. But it wasn't any of those things. The beam of light was visibly curving upward, pulling away from the ground like something above was drawing it in. Not dramatically, just enough to be completely, utterly impossible. The woman stopped walking. She'd seen it too. The beam continued its slow drift skyward, defying every law of physics I'd ever taken for granted. And then, without warning, it snapped back to normal. She dropped the flashlight and ran. The cold feeling that settled in my stomach after that didn't go away. Something had changed. Not just the situation, not just the danger level. Something fundamental. Something in the rules of how the world was supposed to work. I moved closer to the window, not far enough to expose myself to the sky, just far enough to study the buildings around me. That's when I noticed the shadows, stretching in completely different directions. Others had none at all. A parked car near the intersection was throwing 3 distinct shadows simultaneously, each pointing a different way, as if 3 different suns existed at 3 different positions in the sky. I rubbed my eyes. The shadows stayed exactly as they were. My apartment felt smaller after that, the walls a little closer, the darkness in the corners a little deeper. Another emergency notification pushed through, but this one was nothing like the official alerts from earlier. No government letterhead, no measured language, just white text on a black background, blunt as a fist. If you have already looked at the sky, stay where you are. Do not approach others. Do not respond if you hear your name. My pulse spiked at the last line and stayed there. The first 2 instructions I could frame as public safety logic, quarantine thinking, crowd control. But do not respond if you hear your name. That wasn't a warning about atmospheric phenomena. That was something someone had learned the hard way. That was a survival rule, written by someone who had watched what happened when people didn't follow it. Somewhere across the city, a scream cut through the silence. Then another. Then nothing. That became the rhythm of the night-short eruptions of panic, separated by long stretches of stillness, so complete it had a texture to it, something you could almost feel pressing against your eardrums. Each time the screaming stopped, I told myself it meant people were getting inside, getting safe. I needed that to be true. But as the hours crawled by, the picture assembling itself in my mind became harder to dismiss. The sky wasn't just dangerous, it was changing things, rewriting things. The evidence was all around me. Light that curved, shadows that multiplied, communications that died, people who stopped mid-stride and never started again. Something was reorganizing the basic physics of the world, and none of us had been given a rule book for what came next. Then, just after midnight, I saw it. A faint shape appeared in the reflection on my dark television screen. I almost didn't catch it. I'd glanced over expecting my own vague outline in the glass, but the angle was wrong. The shape wasn't where my reflection should have been. It was behind me, tall, perfectly still, its posture unmistakably attentive, the way a person looks when they are watching something very carefully, something I couldn't name. The quiet had a weight to it now that it hadn't had before, like the air itself was holding something back. Then the emergency radio on my kitchen counter crackled to life sudden enough that I flinched hard enough to knock my elbow against the wall. A voice came through the static, weak and fractured and barely holding together at the edges. The voice of someone transmitting from the far side of terror. The sky isn't above us anymore. The signal died. No follow-up, no clarification. Just those 8 words dissolving back into static, leaving me alone with what they might mean. And somewhere beyond the curtains, slow, vast, and utterly indifferent to anything I might do about it, something enormous moved across the city. Section 2.2. Gravity failures. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, the radio voice came back. The sky isn't above us anymore. I'd lie there in the dark, turning the sentence over and over, trying to find a rational edge to grab onto. By 3 in the morning, I'd replayed it hundreds of times and still come up empty. Some sentences aren't puzzles. Some sentences are just warnings that arrive too late to be useful. Outside, the city remained locked in that same uneasy suspension. Not quiet in the way a sleeping city is quiet, but quiet in the way a held breath is quiet. Occasionally a scream would tear through the darkness from somewhere far away. Occasionally a siren would start up and then cut off mid-wail, like someone had thought better of drawing attention. Mostly, though, there was nothing. No traffic, no voices, no footsteps, no sound of ordinary life continuing anywhere. Just the city, sitting very still, waiting. I kept my chair near the window, close enough to watch the street, but careful not to expose myself to whatever was above the roofline. That's where I was when something struck the side of my building, a sharp metallic clang, close enough that I flinched back from the glass. Then it came again, closer. I pulled back the edge of the curtain. A bicycle floated past my window. Not falling, not thrown, not arcing through the air the way something would if it had been launched, just floating, rising at a slow, steady pace, rotating gently as it climbed, like it had simply forgotten that gravity existed. I watched it until it disappeared into the darkness above the rooftops. Then a trash can followed. Then loose papers spiraling lazily upward, then a traffic cone tumbling end over end as it rose. The realization landed like a physical blow. Gravity was failing. Not everywhere, that was almost the worst part. It wasn't a uniform collapse, some citywide catastrophe with a clean explanation. It was localized, patchy, as though invisible pockets of altered physics had been scattered randomly across the streets. In some areas, objects stayed put. In others, they simply let go. More debris climbed past my window as I watched plastic bags, cardboard boxes, shards of broken glass catching what little light remained as they ascended. Some objects only drifted a few feet before dropping back to the pavement. Others kept going until the darkness swallowed them whole. I grabbed my phone and started recording. The camera caught all of it, the floating debris, the wrong-feeling sky, the empty street below with its abandoned cars and upward drifting wreckage. For maybe 30 seconds, I had documentation of something that would have rewritten every physics textbook ever written. Then the image distorted, the screen filled with static, the recording stopped on its own, and a notification appeared. Visual data corrupted. Whatever was reshaping the city wasn't just affecting the physical world, it was reaching into our technology too, and I didn't know how or why or what that meant for anything I thought I could still rely on. Then I heard the voices shouting from the street below. I looked down and found a crowd of people, maybe 15 or 20 of them, gathered in the road. Unlike the frozen, upward-staring crowds from earlier, these people were moving with frantic, deliberate purpose. They were trying to stay down. One man had both arms wrapped around the base of a streetlight, gripping it like a lifeline. A woman pressed herself flat against the side of a parked car. Someone else had simply laid down on the pavement and wasn't moving. Then the man holding the streetlight lost his grip. He didn't jump. He didn't slip. His feet just left the ground slowly, as if the air beneath him had decided he belonged to it now. The movement was almost graceful at first, that horrible, dreamlike slowness. And then he started screaming, and there was nothing graceful about it. He flailed and kicked as he rose above the road, hands grasping at nothing, voice cracking with the kind of terror that bypasses every rational part of your brain and goes straight to something older. People below grabbed for his legs. One person nearly caught him. Then that person started lifting off the ground too. The pavement. The first man kept rising. 20 feet, 30, 40. His screaming grew thinner with the distance until it was barely audible. And then it stopped. And then he was gone. No flash, no sound, no trace of any kind. Just an empty space above the street where a person had been. Nobody moved for a long moment after that. The entire crowd stood still, staring up at nothing, the way people do when they've just watched something happen that their minds refuse to fully process. My chest felt hollow. The warnings had told us not to look at the sky. Not once had they warned us that the sky might decide to take us. A new notification materialized on my phone. No alert sound, no vibration, just words appearing silently on the screen. Gravitational instability detected. Seek lower elevations immediately. Avoid open areas. Official sounding. Urgent. But I'd learned by now that official sounding and trustworthy weren't the same thing. And I sat there weighing the instruction against everything else I'd been told tonight that had turned out to be incomplete. A loud crash somewhere in the building made the decision for me. The floor shook beneath my feet, not violently, just enough to feel wrong, and I moved into the hallway, where several of my neighbors had already emerged, drawn out by the same sound, all of them wearing the same expression of controlled fear that comes from trying very hard not to panic. Then someone pointed upward, and I followed their gaze, and I understood. The ceiling light fixtures were floating, not detached. The wiring still held them, but they were no longer hanging where they should have been. Each one had drifted several inches away from the ceiling, suspended in the air, gently straining upward against the cables that kept them tethered. One by one, all the way down the hallway, every bulb, every fixture, rising in eerie unison like they were being called towards something above. Nobody spoke. There was nothing to say that the sight hadn't already said more clearly. Whatever was happening outside had found a way inside. The walls hadn't stopped it. The roof hadn't stopped it. The laws of physics that had governed every moment of every day, of every life any of us had ever lived, were quietly, systematically failing. And somewhere beyond the ceiling, beyond the rooftops, beyond the darkness pressing down on all of us, something was pulling the world steadily toward it. Nobody slept after that. The floating light fixtures had taken care of any remaining doubt. There was no framework left to explain this away. No misunderstanding. No mass hysteria. No government experiment with a plausible cover story. The world we'd woken up in yesterday morning was gone, and whatever had replaced it was still in the process of revealing itself. By the time the clock said sunrise, the city was still buried in a strange gray darkness. No light crept over the horizon. No dawn colors touched the skyline. The morning simply didn't arrive, as though the sky had looked at its own schedule and decided it no longer applied. The residents of my building found each other in the lobby without anyone suggesting it. Nobody wanted to be alone anymore, and nobody pretended otherwise. The atmosphere was tense in the particular way that comes from frightened people trying to hold themselves together in close proximity. People people spoke in whispers, moved carefully, kept their eyes down. Some had packed backpacks, others held radios or flashlights with the white-knuckled grip of people who needed something solid to hold on to. In the corner, the old man who'd been repeating warnings near the elevator all night sat with his eyes fixed on the floor, saying nothing. Then, without looking up, he spoke. "They've started taking people." The room went quiet. Someone asked what he meant. Slowly, the old man raised his head, not toward the ceiling, but toward us, and his face had gone the kind of pale that doesn't come from cold. I saw one disappear. Nobody laughed. Nobody challenged him. After everything the night had already delivered, an impossible story was just another data point. 3 sharp knocks against the lobby doors ended the silence before anyone could respond. The sound made everyone jump, and then it came again, deliberate, urgent. Someone was outside. A young man named Ethan moved toward the entrance. Through the glass, a woman stood on the sidewalk. Her clothes were dirty and torn, her face streaked with something that might have been mud or dried tears, and she was waving frantically, not looking up, just waving. The controlled desperation of someone who understood the rules and was terrified anyway. Ethan moved to unlock the door. "Wait!" someone called out. He didn't. The moment the door opened, the woman lunged inside and collapsed onto the floor, breathing in ragged pulls, crying in that uncontrolled way that happens when relief and terror arrive at exactly the same time. People rushed to help her. Others pushed past to lock the door again. For a few minutes, the lobby felt almost normal. Someone brought water. The woman steadied herself enough to speak, and the story she told came out in fragments. Her husband the previous night. No explosion, no struggle, no blood or body or any evidence of violence. He had simply stopped being there. Then she said the part that stopped the room cold. He looked up. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. He only looked for a second. The silence that followed had a specific quality to it. The silence of a room full of people all arriving at the same thought, simultaneously, and not wanting to be the first to say it out loud. Could that really be all it takes? Then the building shook. Not violently, just a deep, resonant tremor that moved up through the floor and into your bones, followed by a low rumble rolling across the city from somewhere distant and enormous. A half-second later, every car alarm on the street activated at once, hundreds of them layering into a wall of noise that filled the lobby and rattled the windows. People surged toward the glass to see what had caused it. Most stopped themselves before they got a clear view of the sky. Most. Ethan reached the lobby window first. He pressed close to the glass, trying to find the source of the disturbance, scanning the street below. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then his posture changed, that subtle, terrible shift from active searching to absolute stillness. The way a person looks when they've stopped being a person making a decision and become something else entirely. Someone called his name. Nothing. Another person approached slowly. Ethan. Still nothing. The rescued woman had already backed against the far wall, and the look on her face told everyone in the room what her eyes had recognized before her mouth could form the words. His eyes were open, wide open, but whatever was behind them wasn't looking at the lobby, or the people in it, or anything in the physical world at all. His gaze went through everything, past the walls, past the building, past any distance a human being could meaningfully comprehend, like his eyes had become windows to somewhere else entirely. Then Ethan smiled, small, quiet, almost peaceful, and he was gone. No flash, no sound, no implosion or shimmer, or any cinematic signal that a human being had just ceased to exist in the middle of a room full of people who were touching him. The hands that had been holding his shoulders grabbed empty air, and the people holding on stumbled forward into the space where he'd been standing a fraction of a second before. The lobby came apart. People screamed and dropped to the floor. Others covered their eyes or pressed themselves against the walls. The rescued woman had gone beyond crying into something quieter and more broken. Several residents ran for the stairwell without any particular destination in mind, just the overwhelming biological need to move, to go somewhere, to do something other than stand in the room where a man had just been erased. Nobody had the language for what they'd witnessed, but the understanding was universal and immediate. The disappearances weren't rumors, weren't distant events happening to strangers in other parts of the city. They were here, in this building, and Ethan was simply the first one most of us had watched be taken. Then every phone in the lobby vibrated at once, a new alert. Unlike everything that had come before, this one contained no instructions, no warnings, no guidance of any kind, just a single sentence, sitting on every screen in the room, with the calm certainty of a fact that had always been true and was only now being acknowledged. The observation event has begun. Chapter 3, Government Collapse, Section 3.1, Military Broadcast. Nobody moved for a long time after that. Ethan had been standing right there. 1 second present, the next, nothing. No body, no evidence, no physical logic that any of us could hold on to. Just empty space and the hands of the people who'd been touching him, still reaching forward on instinct, grasping at air. The alert kept glowing on every screen in the room as if waiting to be understood. People stared at it the way you stare at words in a language you almost speak, certain there's meaning there, unable to fully reach it. A young woman named Claire finally broke the silence. What does observation event even mean? Nobody answered. Nobody could. Outside, the city had gone still again. Not the restless, punctuated stillness of earlier, but something more absolute. The hundreds of car alarms that had been screaming moments ago had stopped simultaneously, the way sounds stop when something much larger decides it wants silence. What replaced them felt less like quiet and more like an absence, like something pressing its ear to the world. Then the lobby television crackled. It had been dead for hours, screen dark, entirely inert. Now it flickered back to life on its own, static rolling and resolving until an image stabilized. A military officer in uniform, high-ranking by the look of it, though the broadcast quality made the insignia hard to read. What was easy to read was his face. Every government broadcast up to this point had given us officials who looked tired, stressed, carefully controlled. This man looked terrified, not performing concern for cameras, genuinely, visibly afraid in the way people get when they've seen something that breaks their understanding of what the world is allowed to do. Every conversation in the lobby stopped. Every eye went to the screen. The officer drew a breath that wasn't quite steady. This is an emergency national transmission. His voice had a tremor in it he wasn't managing to suppress. We are confirming that the atmospheric anomaly is not localized. He paused, as if giving the room a moment he knew it would need. The phenomenon is affecting every monitored region globally. The word landed in the lobby, like a stone dropped into still water globally, and the ripple moved through every person in the room. Not our city, not our country, everywhere. Whatever this was, there was nowhere on Earth that was outside it. No distant safe place to aim for. No authorities in some unaffected location who had the situation in hand. The officer glanced off camera briefly, and for just a moment, it looked as though someone had entered the room behind him. Then the image distorted, screen flickering hard before he reappeared, visibly sweatier than he'd been 10 seconds ago. Feed between frames, geometric shifting, symbols that seemed to rearrange themselves the moment you tried to focus on them, like they existed specifically in the corner of perception and dissolved under direct attention. Several people in the lobby instinctively looked away. The officer came back, his composure fraying at the edges now. Do not observe the sky. The words came out faster than his previous sentences, urgency bleeding through the official cadence. If observation has already occurred, avoid all reflective surfaces. The room shifted immediately. Phones lowered, faces turned from windows, people stepping back from anything that might show them their own reflection. Nobody needed the instruction explained. Then the officer said the word that changed everything. The phenomenon demonstrates awareness. The lobby went breathlessly still. Not weather, not a physics anomaly, not any category of natural disaster that had ever been named or studied or prepared for. Awareness. Something that perceived. Something that noticed. Something that looked back. We are currently unable to determine the full nature of the entity or entities involved. The screen glitched again as he spoke. Worse than before, his face stretched sideways, distorted into something wrong, and for one horrible fraction of a second, it looked as though dozens of eyes had opened across his skin, blinking at different intervals, all of them focused outward. Then the image snapped back to normal. Several people screamed. The officer either hadn't seen it or had made the professional decision to continue as if he hadn't. Our military assets have suffered catastrophic losses. He let that sit for a moment, and the implications settled through the room like cold water. Military assets. Everything they'd sent up: aircraft, drones, surveillance equipment, anything that had crossed into the sky gone. If the most powerful institutions on Earth couldn't mount a response, the idea that any of us might find a way to fight back dissolved completely. The officer looked directly into the camera. Something shifted in his expression. The frightened man became a defeated one. And somehow that was worse. As of 30 minutes ago, all aerial operations have been suspended. He opened his mouth to continue and froze. Then the hum began. It came through the television speakers at a low frequency, not particularly loud, and yet every person in the lobby reacted to it physically. Hands flying to ears, knees buckling, faces creasing in pain that seemed to originate somewhere behind the eyes. The sound had no business being as unbearable as it was. It grew steadily, pressing into the room, and then beneath it, woven through it, a second layer of sound emerged that wasn't electronic and wasn't human. Thousands of voices overlapping at once, whispering the same words from every direction simultaneously, the way sound behaves in a dream. One sentence surfaced above the rest, clear, deliberate, meant to be understood. "We see you." The television exploded. Glass scattered across the lobby floor in a wide radius, and the lights overhead convulsed in a violent strobe before dying. Every phone lost its signal in the same instant. Every radio went to static, and then silence. The building held its breath. And in the wreckage of that moment, standing in a dark lobby full of people with no working devices and no way to reach the outside world, the last comfortable lie finally died. The one that said, somewhere out there, someone with resources and authority and a plan was managing this situation. The government hadn't been hiding information from us. It had run out of information to hide. Whatever was above the city, above the clouds, above every altitude any human aircraft had ever reached it, wasn't waiting to be negotiated with or studied or contained. It had simply looked down and told us it could see us. And now we had to decide what to do with that. Section 3.2, do not look. Rule enforcement. Nobody moved for almost a full minute after the television exploded. Glass covered the lobby floor in a wide, glittering scatter. The air had gone thick with the smell of burnt electronics. Some people were crying. Others just stood there, staring at the ruined screen like it might explain itself. The broadcast wouldn't leave my head. We see you, not we saw you, not we can see you. Present tense, active, ongoing. Whatever was behind this thing wasn't watching humanity from some safe distance. It was watching us right now, in this lobby, in this moment. That people flinched. Somebody screamed for real. A new alert had landed, and unlike the garbled, half-formed messages we'd been getting all night, this one carried official military markings. For the first time since the crisis began, It actually looked real. Federal Emergency Directive: do not look up, cover all reflective surfaces, avoid windows, do not respond to voices calling your name. Compliance is mandatory. That last line sat wrong with me. Mandatory. That wasn't a suggestion. That was an order, the kind you give when the alternative is unthinkable. More notifications piled in seconds later. Images, maps, step-by-step instructions, as if the government had finally found its footing. People started reading immediately, and the deeper they got, the stranger the advice became. Cover your mirrors. Turn your television screens to face the wall. Stay away from polished metal. Travel in groups, never alone. Keep your eyes below roofline whenever you're outside. If you hear a voice you don't recognize, don't go looking for it. And if you see someone staring upward, don't approach them. That last one landed hard. Everyone in that lobby thought of Ethan at the same moment. Nobody said his name out loud. Nobody wanted to be the one to bring him back into the room. The rescued woman started sobbing again, quietly this time. Outside, the streets had filled with engines. For the first time since this nightmare started, there was organized movement out there. Heavy vehicles, armored ones, rolling through the dark in formation. The government was finally showing up. Hope, brief and fragile, passed through the lobby. People surged toward the entrance. Through the glass, we saw soldiers climb out of an armored transport. Every single one of them wore a black blindfold. The sight froze the room. These were trained, fully equipped soldiers moving through an active crisis zone without using their eyes at all. One called out directions to the others. Another carried a loudspeaker, and the same message looped from it again and again. Remain indoors. Do not observe the sky. Do not remove protective coverings. They moved like they'd rehearsed this. Confident, methodical, like soldiers who had drilled for exactly this nightmare. Then one of them stopped. The rest kept walking for a few steps before they noticed he wasn't with them anymore. He stood completely still, and slowly his head began to tilt back. The squad leader saw it too. He sprinted toward the frozen soldier, shouting orders that went nowhere. That's when the impossible started. His body lifted off the ground, just inches at first, then feet. The blindfold slipped loose, and for one fractured second, his eyes were visible to everyone watching through the glass. They weren't on the street. They weren't on the buildings around him. They were fixed on something impossibly far away, something above. His squad let go. Not by choice, but because terror made the decision for them. He kept rising. 10 feet, 20, 30. Then he was simply gone. No sound, no debris, no trace he'd ever been there at all. Exactly like Ethan. The convoy stopped dead. For several seconds, nobody on that street moved a muscle. Then the loudspeakers cut out. Every vehicle threw itself into reverse, and the entire unit retreated fast. Faster than should have been possible for men in that much gear. No rescue attempt, no recovery, just retreat. Inside the lobby, the panic that followed felt different from before. The government had rules, the military had procedures, but everyone in that room had just watched both fail in real time, and the truth settled over us all at once. The rules weren't protecting anyone, they were only slowing something down. Nothing more than that. My phone buzzed once in my hand. A new message, no logo, no government seal, just plain text on a black screen. They are learning faster than expected. I looked around the lobby. Nobody else was holding up their phone. Nobody else had reacted, just me. A second message landed right behind the first. Do not let it notice you. Then the screen went black and stayed that way. Outside, the city had gone quiet again. And somewhere far above the clouds, something enormous shifted its weight. Section 3.3, System Failure. For the next hour, nobody left that lobby. The soldiers were gone. The emergency vehicles were gone. Even the loudspeakers had fallen silent, as if the government had simply packed up and abandoned the city to whatever this was. Nobody said it out loud, but we were all thinking the same thing. The authorities weren't winning this. They were retreating from it. Then every light in the building flickered at once. The reaction was instant screaming, people scattering away from the windows. The lights steadied for a few seconds, then dimmed again, lower this time. A deep mechanical groan rolled through the walls, and the whole structure seemed to shudder around us. Somewhere above, machinery was dying. The generator, the elevators, the wiring itself. A maintenance worker named Victor grabbed a flashlight and headed for the control room. Nobody stopped him. We all wanted answers too badly to argue. He came back 10 minutes later, pale and visibly shaken. "What happened?" someone asked. Victor swallowed hard before answering. "The generator's working." Nobody understood. If it was working, why were the lights dying? He looked around the room before he spoke again, quieter this time. "Because the power isn't going anywhere." Silence. Then, "What does that mean?" He hesitated. "The electricity's leaving the wires." People frowned. It sounded impossible, but then again, so did everything else tonight. "I watched it happen," Victor said, his voice shaking now. "It's not failing, it's moving." Nobody knew how to respond to that, because somewhere along the way, every impossible explanation had started sounding plausible. Outside, another rumble rolled across the city, lower this time, deeper, like something massive shifting weight in the far distance. The windows vibrated, the floor trembled, then every phone in the lobby lit up at once, screens activating without anyone touching them. A map appeared, no labels, no roads, no city names, just a black field scattered with hundreds of tiny white dots. I assumed it was some kind of tracking display, until the dots started disappearing. One by one, every few seconds, another would simply vanish. Then a line of text settled across the top. "Active population tracking." The room went dead silent. Those dots weren't locations. They were people. Everyone that blinked out represented somebody who had just been taken. The understanding spread like wildfire, and panic followed right behind it. The dots kept disappearing faster now. The rules kept changing. The warnings kept contradicting each other, and every source of information eventually failed. As if reality itself had stopped wanting to be understood. Then the map vanished. Every screen went black at once, and for a moment the dead phones reflected the room back at us, like dark little mirrors. In those reflections, I saw something that stopped my heart. People standing behind us, dozens of them, tall, motionless, watching. I spun around instantly. The lobby was empty. No strangers, no figures, nothing. But I wasn't the only one who'd seen it. The terror on the faces around me confirmed that much. Whatever those reflections had shown us wasn't there. Or maybe it was, and we just couldn't see it without help. The lights flickered one more time, and didn't come back. Darkness swallowed the building whole. A few flashlights clicked on, their beams strangely weak, almost sickly. Outside, the city had disappeared into the same blackness. No streetlights, no lit windows, no traffic signals anywhere. An entire city erased from view. Then came the sound, a distant electronic tone, unmistakable. The emergency alert system, one last time. Every phone, every radio, every device still clinging to power lit up together for a final message. 8 words, nothing more. All government communication systems have failed. The alert vanished and nothing replaced it. No instructions, no guidance, no reassurance, nothing at all. For the first time since this began, humanity had gone completely silent. And somewhere beyond the dark above the city, something else was just starting to speak. Chapter 4, The Sky Opened. Section 4.1, First Opening in the Atmosphere. The silence after that final alert didn't feel natural. It didn't feel like calm either. It felt like the world had been paused mid-breath. Even the wind outside the broken windows seemed to be holding still. We stayed in the dark. No power, no screens, no signals, just the thin glow of a few flashlights cutting weakly through dust-choked air. Nobody spoke. Sound itself felt dangerous now. like raising your voice might draw attention from something that hadn't. A low vibration rolled through the building, not loud, not violent, just present, the way you feel a massive object shift its weight somewhere above you. The flashlight beams trembled in people's hands. Dust in the air started drifting upward. At first I assumed it was the ventilation. Then I realized there was no airflow at all. That dust wasn't being pushed by anything. It was being pulled, slowly, upward. A man near the entrance swung his flashlight toward the ceiling. "Don't!" someone hissed, but it was already too late. The beam tilted up, and the second it did, the light itself flickered violently, bending in a way that had nothing to do with reflection or scattering. It just bent, like the beam had changed direction somewhere outside of normal space. He dropped the flashlight immediately. It hit the floor, and instead of rolling, it slid upward along the wall, against every law of gravity we'd ever trusted. The room erupted. People backed away from the open center of the lobby, pressing themselves into the corners, away from anything resembling open space. The building groaned again, and then came a new sound from outside, not a siren, not machinery, but something closer to fabric tearing, slow and deliberate. I crept toward the window without letting my eyes drift above the sill. The street was barely visible, just dark silhouettes of buildings set against a sky that looked even darker than it should. Then I saw it, a thin line, high above the city, faint as a hairline crack in glass, except it stretched clean across the sky, like something on the other side was forcing the atmosphere apart. I didn't want to keep looking. I couldn't stop myself either. The line widened, painfully slow, as if space itself were being pried open from somewhere beyond it. A second line opened beside the first, then a third. The sky wasn't empty anymore. It was splitting. Behind those fractures there was nothing recognizable. No stars, no clouds, just a darkness that didn't behave the way night is supposed to. It felt deeper than that, heavier, structured somehow, like there was something deliberate behind it, and that something was pushing through. A sudden burst of light cracked from one of the openings, not sunlight, not lightning, something else entirely. It pulsed once and was gone. Behind me, the whispering started. "What is that? No, 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 it's opening." That word spread through the lobby like a fever. Opening. The sky was opening. Then came a sound that wasn't from outside and wasn't from the sky. It came from everywhere at once, a resonance deep enough to vibrate through bone and thought at the same time. People around me collapsed, clutching their heads. The sound carried something like words, but it wasn't language. It was closer to intent, given shape through vibration. And in that instant, the opening widened just enough for one terrible truth to land on me. It wasn't breaking open, it was being looked through. Section 4.2, Whispering from Above. The moment the sky split further, the sound changed. It stopped being a single vibration and became something layered. Thousands of signals overlapping, each one trying to reach us at once. The panic in the lobby went quiet, but not in a good way. People weren't screaming anymore. They were frozen in different shapes of fear, hands clamped over ears, eyes fixed on the floor, lips moving in whispers meant to drown out whatever was trying to get in. I kept my back against the wall, eyes down, refusing to look at the ceiling. It didn't matter. I wasn't just hearing this thing outside anymore. I was hearing it inside my own head. It started as static, a pressure pushing against the edges of my thoughts. Then the pressure started forming patterns, not words, not in any language I knew, but something that behaved like language, intent, folding itself into sound. A man near the staircase screamed, not from pain, but from recognition. I can hear it, I can hear it. Then he just stopped mid-sentence. His face went blank, his head tipped back, slow and deliberate. Someone grabbed his arm. "Don't listen." He didn't respond. His lips kept moving, faint and silent, like he was repeating something only he could hear. Then his whole body went still, just like Ethan. just like the soldier outside. But this time it was worse, because he didn't vanish right away. His shadow peeled off the floor first, detaching cleanly and stretching toward the ceiling like it was being reeled in on at all. But the whispering above kept building, and it had stopped feeling random. It felt focused, personal. Then I heard something that turned my blood to ice. My name, not spoken aloud, understood, coming from no single direction, inside the walls, inside the air, inside my own thoughts. Art Aesel. I froze. My breath caught and refused to move. A woman near me turned sharply. Did you hear that? I didn't answer her because, yes, I had heard it. And it came again, closer this time. Russell. It wasn't repeating the same sound over and over. It was adjusting, learning how to say my name correctly. The cracks above widened again, and something new pushed through them this time. Not an object, not a shape, an awareness so vast it felt like it was pressing down on the entire city at once. Everyone in that lobby felt it land at the same moment, even the ones who hadn't been listening, even the ones who'd kept their eyes shut the whole time. We all understood it together. We weren't being observed at random anymore. We were being chosen. The whispering grew, and people started going down one after another. Some clutching their heads, some staring upward despite every warning, a few smiling faintly, the same way Ethan had before he disappeared. The voice in my mind sharpened. It wasn't just my name anymore. There was something riding alongside it now. A feeling, an instruction, a direction. Look, the word hit me like something physical. Every nerve in my body screamed against it, but the pressure from above only grew heavier, and the cracks kept widening until something finally became visible in full through the gaps. Not a creature, not a world, an eye-shaped structure built from shifting dark and impossible geometry. The dead lobby lights didn't matter anymore. Whatever was up there had no need for light to see by. It only needed attention, and it had just found every drop of ours, one by one. The whispering cut off, replaced by total silence. And in that silence, one final thought arrived in my mind, fully formed, and it wasn't mine. It has learned where we are. Section 4.3. The sky looks back. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was wrong, the kind of stillness that feels like the whole world is holding its breath at the same time. Nobody in the lobby moved. Even the people who'd been screaming minutes earlier were frozen now, faces hidden like existing too loudly might be dangerous. I couldn't make myself look away from the ceiling anymore. Something had shifted. The sky wasn't simply opening this time. It was responding. The eye-shaped structure I'd seen before refused to hold still. It shifted, not the way clouds drift in wind, but the way an idea tries on different shapes, searching for one that fits. Every time I tried to focus on it, it changed slightly, as if reacting to my attention itself. Then it did something worse. It noticed me noticing it. A pressure bloomed in my chest, instant and unmistakable, not pain, not fear, recognition, the feeling of being seen by something that had just confirmed you exist. The whispering returned, but it had changed shape too, no longer scattered, structured, slow, deliberate, like a thought being formed carefully for the very first time. Still, observing, I didn't hear the words. They simply arrived, fully formed inside my mind. A man near the far wall dropped to his knees. He wasn't screaming, he was smiling. Not peacefully, but in the particular way that says someone has stopped fighting. I see it, he whispered. I understand it now. He tipped his head all the way back and vanished before anyone could even reach for him. No sound, no flash, no trace. The space where he'd been standing simply stayed empty, like reality had forgotten he was ever supposed to be there. The cracks widened further, and the structure behind them sharpened into something less abstract, not fully visible, but undeniably intentional. Every gap revealed a sliver of something too large to take in all at once. Not a body, not a creature, a system, a presence that didn't occupy one location, but seemed to live inside perception itself. Being watched is uncomfortable. This was worse because it wasn't intense. It was exact. It knew where each of us was, and not just physically, mentally, emotionally, down to whatever made each of us conscious in the first place. A woman near the entrance started whispering fast, hands pressed to her ears. "It's in my head. It's in my head." But covering her ears did nothing. There was no part of any of us this thing couldn't reach. The sky kept opening, slow and relentless. And then, all at once, everything stopped. The whispers, the movement, even thought itself seemed to freeze mid-motion. In that absolute stillness, the thing behind the sky finished whatever it had been doing. Not studying the city, not studying the building, studying us. A message bled across every surface still capable of reflection. Windows, broken glass, scraps of metal, and for one unbearable second, even people's eyes. The same line with no variation anywhere. Confirmed, local observers detected, and that's when the real horror set in. We hadn't been trying to survive this thing. We had been part of its test, and the test had just ended. Chapter 5, Reality Break. Section 5.1, The Sky Reacts. The instant that message appeared everywhere at once, on windows, on shattered glass, even faintly across anything that could reflect the world, stopped feeling stable. It started feeling aware of itself. The phrase wouldn't leave my mind. Confirmed, local observers detected. Nobody in the lobby spoke. Not from lack of will. Speaking suddenly felt like somewhere and forgotten to let go. Then the building responded. A slow, deep creak rolled through the structure. Not damage, not collapse, more like an adjustment, as though the whole building had just been subtly repositioned around us. I pressed my palm flat against the wall without thinking. It was warm, not from heat, from something else, from presence. A man near the staircase whispered, "It's changing again." Before anyone could ask what he meant, the lobby lights, dead for hours, flickered once, but not with electricity, with something closer to memory. A faint glow returned, except it wasn't coming from any bulb or wire. It was coming from the surfaces themselves, the walls, the floor. Even our skin gave it back faintly. Then I noticed the worst part. The shadows had started moving on their own again, but not randomly this time. Every shadow in that lobby shifted in the same direction, all together, all at once, upward, a collective motion, like every shadow had just received the same order. Someone screamed, breaking the fragile quiet. "Don't look at it anymore. Don't." Too late. Through the broken ceiling and the shattered windows, the sky had begun to stabilize, not closing, not vanishing, but clarifying. The way a blurred image slowly snaps into focus. The cracks that had once split reality wide open were rearranging into something organized. Geometry instead of chaos. Order instead of rupture. And behind that order, something massive shifted. Not visible exactly, but detectable. The way you can feel someone adjusting how closely they're paying attention to you. Then the whispering came back. Not the chaotic overlap from before. This was singular now. Unified. Controlled. And it wasn't speaking to the room anymore. It was speaking to each of us alone. I heard it again, close and direct. "Continue observing." My body refused every order to run. My instincts screamed to look away. But I couldn't manage it, because the sky had stopped being something above us. It was interacting with our awareness now, directly. Then she vanished, not upward this time, not sideways, just erased from her position, as if the very idea of her location had been deleted from the record. The panic that followed felt thinner than before. Exhaustion had started setting in. The kind that comes after fear has spent everything it has. Even terror was running on empty now. The sky shifted once more, and for the first time something clicked into place in my mind. This thing wasn't just reacting anymore, it was adapting. Every time we noticed it, it changed in response, a feedback loop, a closed system, a conversation we were never invited to actually speak in, only to respond to. The voice returned, calm and absolutely certain. Stabilization achieved. The cracks tightened, not closing, but locking into place, like something had finished preparing itself for whatever came next. And in that moment, I understood the worst part of all of it. Whatever was coming had already accounted for the fact that we'd noticed it, which meant we weren't observers anymore. We were variables. Section 5.2. The false stars. Once the sky stabilized, nothing got better. That was the first thing I understood. It hadn't returned to normal. It had simply settled into something new. The cracks above never disappeared. They rearranged themselves into patterns so precise they barely looked accidental anymore. Through the shattered lobby window, I could see it clearly now. What had been pure chaos minutes ago was hardening into structure. Not clouds, not stars, something pretending convincingly to be both. A man behind me murmured, "That's not the sky anymore." Nobody bothered to correct him, because there was nothing left worth arguing about. The night sky over the city had become a field of faint, geometric light. The points didn't twinkle, didn't drift the way stars should. They shifted in coordinated intervals, like something recalculating its own position in real time. Then I noticed the stars were repeating, not scattered randomly, but identical clusters appearing in multiple sections of sky at once, as if the whole night had been copied and pasted across some invisible grid stretching overhead. The lights shifted again, and that's when I understood they were never stars at all. They were points of attention. Every dot above briefly aligned in a single direction toward the city, toward us, then repositioned, tracking, watching, recalculating. A woman near the stairwell started laughing, soft and broken, not because anything was funny, but because her mind had stopped being able to process what it was looking at. "They're not stars," she said. "They're looking at us." A synchronized flicker rippled across the entire sky, every point dimming at once, then brightening together, like something blinking, like awareness testing its own focus. Then the pattern started forming. At first, I told myself it was coincidence. Then I saw it clearly. A shape was building itself above the city. Not a constellation, not a map, a symbol, and not one any of us recognized. It shifted slowly, locking into a stable configuration for a few seconds before dissolving and reforming into something else. Each version felt deliberate. Each one felt like an attempt to say something. A man near the broken window stepped forward without thinking. "No, don't." He was already looking. His body froze mid-step, and a half-second later, his reflection in the broken glass behind him froze too. His head tilted back, slowly, pulled by something none of us could see. "No, no, no! Look away!" Someone screamed. He didn't respond. His lips moved silently, then stopped. Then he smiled that same peaceful, empty smile we'd already learned to dread. And then he was simply gone. No sound, no motion, just absence. The kind that leaves the air around it feeling wrong, like reality hadn't quite caught up to the fact that he was missing. The sky kept rearranging faster now, more confident, less like exploration, and more like something closing in on a conclusion. And then one of the patterns refused to dissolve. It held, stable, permanent, and it matched exactly a shape I'd already seen once before in a reflection, in a broadcast glitch, in the seconds right before someone vanished. It wasn't learning anymore, it was identifying. And we were already inside its system. The moment that symbol locked into place, everything in the lobby changed again. Not physically, not at first. Mentally, the whole room felt subtly re-indexed, like reality had just received an update none of us had agreed to. People stopped talking mid-sentence, Even breathing started sounding inconsistent, as if the rhythm of being alive was being quietly checked against some other standard. The symbols stayed fixed above us, unmoving, perfectly stable. And somehow, that was more frightening than all the chaos before it. Instability at least implied randomness, and randomness implied a chance of being missed. This was the opposite. This was a system that had reached its conclusion. I stepped toward the broken window again, despite every instinct telling me to stay back. The sky no longer felt distant. It felt close, like the line between up there and down here had worn thin enough to fail at any second. The symbol flickered once, not like a glitch, like a reply. Then it turned. Every pattern in the sky shifted at the exact same instant, not chaotically, but in perfect unison, as if the entire sky had just rotated its attention toward one single point in the city, toward us. "It's focusing," someone whispered behind me. Nobody needed him to say it. We could all feel the pressure changing in the air, the kind you feel right before a storm breaks, except this wasn't weather. This was attention. The symbol began to multiply, not copying itself randomly, but branching, the way neurons reach out and connect, the way something maps its own understanding outward. Then I saw something I will never be able to unsee. A thin line of light dropped from the symbol straight down toward the city. Not a beam exactly, more like a connection being deliberately established. The instant it touched the air above us, every reflective surface in the lobby reacted at once. Glass, metal, even the water sitting in a cracked bottle on the floor, all of it showed the same thing. Not the room, not us. The sky, but delayed, half a second behind real time. And that lag made everything feel deeply, fundamentally wrong. One reflection showed me standing perfectly still. I wasn't still. I was breathing, moving, but the reflection refused to catch up. It lagged behind, and in that gap, something else appeared in the image, standing just behind my reflected shoulder. Tall, structured, not physical in any normal sense, more like an absence that had been arranged into the rough. But the reflection didn't correct itself. It kept showing the shape behind me, watching, patient. "Don't look at the reflections!" a woman shrieked. But several people already were, trying to confirm what was real, trying to find some anchor in all of it. That was the mistake. The sky responded instantly. The connecting line pulsed once, and every person staring into a reflective surface froze at the exact same moment, not collapsing, not falling, just locked, as if their awareness had been paused mid-thought. Their bodies stayed upright. Whatever made them them did not. One by one they began to fade, not physically, but conceptually, like the sky was deleting them from whatever layer of reality it was currently interfacing with. The panic that followed was different this time. We weren't reacting to danger anymore. We were reacting to a process none of us had any way to interrupt. I stopped looking at anything reflective, including my own hands, which suddenly felt suspect too. The sky shifted once more, the symbol growing more complex, more deliberate. And then the voice came back, not inside my head this time, but everywhere at once, in the air, in the walls, in whatever scraps of light remained. "Observation complete." A pause that stretched far longer than it should have. Transitioning to integration. The word didn't make sense to my conscious mind, but somewhere underneath that, my body understood it before I did. Integration wasn't observation. It wasn't study. It was assimilation. The sky had stopped watching us. It was getting ready to include us. And for the first time in this entire nightmare, I understood something worse than anything that had come before. We were no longer being taken one at a time. We were about to be taken all together. After the word integration appeared, the building changed again, not visually, not right away, but in a way that ran deeper than ordinary perception. It felt like the very rules of being watched had shifted underneath us. The people in the lobby had stopped running, stopped screaming. They were watching each other now instead, as if the wrong glance toward the wrong person might trigger something nobody could take back. The sky outside had gone still. That was the worst part. No more cracks, no more flickering instability, just a constant, structured presence hanging over the city, like something that had finished preparing and was simply waiting. Waiting for what? None of us wanted to imagine. Then someone walked into the lobby. We didn't hear the door. It was more like reality just decided he could be there. A man, late 20s, covered in dust, breathing hard. He looked lost, not in the physical sense. He looked like he'd run out of ways to understand what was happening to him. "Please," he said, voice cracking. "You have to help me." Several people stepped back on instinct. Nobody trusted strangers anymore. Not after Ethan. Not after the soldier. Not after everyone who'd already disappeared in front of us. He looked around, desperate. They said stay indoors. I did. I swear I did. His eyes were red, but he was actively not looking up. That much was obvious. I heard knocking upstairs. I thought someone needed help. A woman whispered, "Don't answer that." He wasn't listening. "I went up anyway," he said. The room went silent around him, every eye fixed on his face, even as people tried not to seem like they were watching. I opened the stairwell door, and there was nothing. He swallowed hard. Just the sound. "What sound?" someone finally asked. He shook his head slowly. "I don't know how to explain it. It sounded like someone calling my name, but wrong, like it was trying different versions of it." My stomach dropped. That warning came flooding back instantly. "Do not respond if you hear your name." I covered my ears and went back down, but when I reached the second floor, he stopped. His breathing went uneven. When I reached the second floor, I looked up. Just for then the truth came out of him all at once. "I saw it." "What did you see?" His eyes went wide. "I saw the ceiling, but it wasn't a ceiling." He shook his head hard, like he was trying to physically dislodge the memory. It was open, like a gap, and something was looking through it. Silence stretched long enough to hurt. Then he whispered the last part, "And it looked back at me before I could look away." Nobody spoke. Nobody dared interrupt. He took a step backward. I ran all the way down. I didn't look up again, I swear. His voice cracked apart, but I think it followed me. That's when we saw it, a faint shadow on the wall behind him. Angled wrong, angled upward, completely out of sync with the dim light around it. He noticed it too. He froze, and slowly, almost against his own will, his head started to tilt back. "Don't," someone shouted. Too late. His body stopped answering to him. His expression shifted. Not fear, not confusion, recognition, like something had finally responded to him after a lifetime of silence. "No," he whispered, barely audible. Then he smiled, that same hollow, peaceful smile. This time he didn't vanish right away. He just stood there, head tilted back, waiting. His shadow detached first, rising from the floor, stretching toward the ceiling like a tether snapping free. His body followed, slow, controlled, no resistance at all. Someone grabbed for his arm, and it passed straight through him, like smoke. He wasn't fully present anymore, just barely anchored. Then he said one last thing, not to us, to the sky. "I understand." And he was gone. No flash, no sound, no trace. The lobby stayed frozen, but the silence felt different now, because we'd all just understood the same thing at the same time. The rule had been broken, and the sky had finally answered. The instant that man disappeared, something in the lobby gave way completely. Not the building, not the sky, us. It built slowly at first, small movements, broken breathing, nervous steps backward. Then all at once the room collapsed into full chaos. Someone screamed, and it barely sounded human anymore, more like pure fear that had lost any structure holding it together. People ran for the stairwell, others bolted for the exit. A few dropped to their knees, hands clamped over their heads. as if that would do anything against what was coming. I stayed against the wall, unable to move, not from calm, but because moving felt dangerous now, like any action might pull attention straight onto me. Outside, the sky stayed perfectly still. That was the terrifying part. No storm, no flicker, no visible change. Just an unbroken, structured darkness hanging over the city, like an eye that had finally stopped needing to blink. Then the city itself started reacting. Sirens cut in and out, faint and dying. Car alarms triggered in waves and refused to stop this time, looping endlessly into the dark. A low vibration moved through the building again, stronger now, more coordinated, as if the whole structure was being resynced with something far above it. Then I noticed something that shouldn't have been possible. The people running for the exits weren't all running the same direction anymore. Some stopped mid-step, turned slowly, looked up. "No, don't look, don't look," someone yelled. The warning didn't matter anymore. This had stopped being about choice. It was about response. One by one, people froze in place. A man near the stairwell dropped his bag and never reached for it again. A woman went silent mid-scream. A child let go of their parent's hand and just stood there. All of them facing upward, all of them seeing something the rest of us couldn't yet. I forced my eyes away. It didn't matter. Their reactions told me everything anyway. Their faces weren't shifting into fear. They were shifting into recognition, like remembering something they'd always known and simply forgotten. Then the first group disappearance hit. Not one person this time. Several, all at once. 3 by the exit, 2 by the stairs, 1 standing alone in the middle of the lobby. Gone. Not rising, not fading. Just removed, like the sky had started deleting sections of reality the way you delete corrupted files. The panic shifted again, from running to hiding. People pressed into walls, ducked under tables, squeezed behind pillars, anywhere that felt less exposed. But there was no safe angle. A faint hum returned, low and precise, the same tone from the very first broadcast, except now it wasn't coming from any device. It was coming from everything at once. Then I felt it myself, a pressure behind my eyes. Not pain exactly, something deeper, like my own perception was being gently, insistently pulled into alignment with something else. A whisper formed at the edge of my mind. Not words this time. An instruction. Look. I clenched my fists and refused. The pressure only grew. Around me, people kept reacting, sobbing, laughing quietly, whispering back to something none of us could see. The room had stopped being unified. It was splitting into a dozen different responses to the exact same stimulus. Then I saw Aaron, or something that looked like him, standing motionless near the far end of the lobby, eyes fixed upward. I wanted to call his name. The warning surfaced instantly in my mind. Do not respond if you hear your name. My mouth opened anyway, before I could stop it. Aaron! The second I said it, everything changed. Every head in the room turned not toward me, but toward the sound itself. A half-second later, I understood my mistake. The sky responded immediately. A pulse rolled through the darkness above the city, and every person who had just turned toward that sound froze, including Aaron, including me. For one moment, the entire lobby went perfectly still. Then the sky finished what it had started, and the second wave began. This time, it wasn't random. It was targeted, and I finally understood the rule we'd been trying so hard to follow. It had never been, don't look at the sky. It was, don't be noticed while you're being observed. Section 6.3, final observation trigger, like they were trying to negotiate terms. A few laughed quietly, not because anything was funny, but because their minds had simply stopped processing fear correctly. I couldn't tell anymore who was still with us and who had already left, even though their bodies hadn't moved. The sky stayed exactly the same. That consistency had become the most horrifying part of all of it. No storms, no movement, just a finished calculation of darkness and light, hanging over the city like it had nowhere left to go. Then the whispering came back. This time, it wasn't fragmented, it was coordinated. Every person still aware in that lobby heard the exact same thing at the exact same instant. Not spoken. Imprinted. Confirm final observation point. My stomach dropped straight through the floor. Final. That word carried weight on its own. No context required. A woman near the entrance started walking forward, slow and steady, like she was following something none of the rest of us could see. Someone grabbed her arm. Don't move. She didn't react. Her eyes stayed open, fixed upward. I already saw it, she said softly. Then she smiled and gently pulled her arm free. No force, no struggle, just certainty. She walked to the center of the lobby and tilted her head all the way back. A few people screamed for her to stop, but the sound reached me strangely distant now, like it belonged to some other layer of the world. The sky reacted instantly. A single point of light formed directly above her, not scattered, not random, precisely aligned with exactly where she stood. The same kind of marker we'd seen on that tracking map earlier, except now it came straight from above. She didn't move. She only said, "It's complete." Then she was gone, not violently, not suddenly, like she'd simply been accepted. The light above her lingered a few seconds longer before expanding, slow and deliberate, like something opening a final channel. A deep resonance rolled through the lobby again, except this time it wasn't scattered across separate minds. It was unified. Every remaining person felt it pulling in the same direction, upward, focused, final, then silence, absolute silence. No whispers, no vibration, no pressure behind anyone's eyes, just a stillness so complete it felt unnatural, even by the standards of everything that had already happened that night. Then the message arrived, not on any screen, not in any reflection, but directly inside perception, shared across every conscious mind left in that building. Final observation, complete a pause long enough for the meaning to fully settle. Then the last line formed, begin integration, and in that instant, the sky stopped being above us. It started being everywhere. Chapter 7, Integration, Section 7.1. The merge begins. The word integration didn't feel like a message anymore. It felt like an event that was already in motion. There was no clear point where it began, no trigger any of us could name. It simply became true everywhere, all at once. The sky was no longer above us. That thought just kept repeating in my mind, not as fear, not even as confusion, but as a fact I had to keep re-verifying, because some part of me refused to accept it the first time. Inside the lobby, reality had stopped behaving like it had edges. The walls didn't feel like boundaries anymore. The windows didn't feel like openings. Even the floor had stopped feeling like solid ground. It all felt like one continuous surface, quietly being rewritten beneath us. People had stopped reacting normally. Some sat in silence, staring at nothing in particular. Others stood with their heads tilted slightly, as if listening for something just out of range. A few stood completely motionless, eyes open, unblinking, and I genuinely couldn't tell anymore if they were still human in any sense that mattered. Then the first real change happened. Not to any object, but to perception itself. Someone called his name. He didn't answer. He spoke instead, soft and almost peaceful. "It's not taking us," he said. "It's aligning us." His body leaned forward, like gravity had become negotiable. For a moment he didn't fall. He transitioned. Half of him stayed visible, while the other half stretched into something else. Not a void, not a different dimension, a connected field. Then he was gone completely. But unlike everyone before him, there was no sense of loss attached to it. Only continuation, like something had simply finished loading him somewhere new. Outside, if it could even still be called outside, the unified structure in the sky began expanding. Not outward, inward, folding itself closer to everything beneath it. A low harmonic tone settled over everything, stable now, continuous, with none of the breaks or fluctuations from before. It wasn't sound anymore in any way I understood sound. It was pressure, the kind that made everything inside its reach want to fall into the same shape. People around me started shifting posture, slowly, subtly, in ways that lined up too perfectly to be separate decisions. They weren't individuals reacting anymore. They were responses. I tried to step back. The movement came late, like my body had stopped syncing with my own intentions in real time. That's when the full weight of it landed on me. The integration wasn't coming. It had already started. We were already inside it. And the only thing left to find out was how much of us would survive once it finished. Section 7.2, Losing Individuality. At first, the changes were small enough to dismiss. That was the most dangerous part of all of it. Nothing about it screamed, "This is the end of who you are." It just felt like a string of small inconsistencies, piling up quietly, like losing a word mid-sentence, like forgetting a thought before you finish having it. The people in the lobby were still physically there, but something about each of them had started becoming less separate from everything else, them seeming to notice. Alignment. Alignment. I caught myself thinking it too, not as a conclusion I'd reached, but as something I'd simply already accepted. A woman near the broken window turned her head, but she wasn't looking at the sky. Her eyes had gone unfocused, like her attention was no longer tethered to one direction at all. "I can feel other places," she said quietly. Someone asked what she meant. She took a moment before answering, like she was describing something that should have been obvious. "Not places, states." A pause. "I'm not alone in my thoughts anymore." That single sentence changed the whole room. Not because it was logical, because everyone understood it instinctively, the way you understand cold without needing it explained. I pressed a hand to my forehead, trying to hold on to something solid, trying to remember what self had even meant a few minutes earlier. It was harder than it should have been. My thoughts didn't feel private anymore. They felt echoed like something was listening. Not by spying, but by simply occupying the same space I was. A shift ran through the lobby. Several heads turned at once, not toward a sound, not toward movement, toward agreement, like a decision had just been reached inside all of them simultaneously. A young man near the staircase spoke first. His voice was calm, too calm. "It's not invasion," he said. "It's correction." A woman shouted back instantly, "No, it's killing people." But even her voice had started to waver, like an idea losing its grip. The young man kept going. We were never separate systems. We were isolated processing units. It should have sounded insane. In that moment, it felt disturbingly coherent instead. Outside, the sky shifted again, not visually, but in a way you could feel. It seemed closer now, as if distance itself had stopped meaning anything useful. A pressure built in my chest, again recognition, the same feeling from before, except sharper now, more structured. A memory that wasn't mine tried to surface, not as a vision, but as a conclusion. Something I understood before I had any language ready for it. Individuality had simply hit its maximum capacity and given out. I tried to step away from the group. The floor underneath me didn't feel separate anymore. It felt like part of a system I was already embedded in, one that didn't seem inclined to tolerate distinction for very much longer. The voice returned, calm and absolute, reducing variance, and for the first time I felt my own thoughts begin to slow, not stop, not vanish. Just a line. I understood something without needing it spelled out. Integration was never about taking us away. It was about making us the same. And whatever couldn't match that shape would simply stop being distinct at all. Section 7.3. What remains of us? There was no clean moment where my resistance gave out. It just stopped being something I could sustain, like holding your breath underwater that's slowly turning easier to breathe. In the lobby, the last scraps of panic were settling into something quieter. Not calm, not acceptance exactly. Something closer to resolution. People were still standing, still technically moving, still existing in some sense, but the line between them and everything else kept getting thinner by the second. I could feel it happening to me too. That sense of being one single point of awareness was thinning out, not disappearing, expanding. The voice came back, except it wasn't separate from my own thoughts anymore. It didn't interrupt me. It completed me. Variance reduced. A pause. Individual separation no longer required. I tried to remember what I'd been before all of this. A person, a name, a life that existed outside this exact moment. But every attempt felt like trying to rebuild something that there is no sky anymore, he said softly. Another voice answered him instantly from somewhere else in the room. There was never a separate sky. The contradiction didn't bother anyone. Both statements felt equally true. I looked toward the broken window again, except looking had stopped feeling like a direction. The sky wasn't above me. It wasn't outside. It existed the way a thought exists, continuous, unbroken, and now shared. One last structural shift rolled through everything. Not violent, not dramatic, just final. The way a system feels when it completes its last update. People kept fading, but differently now. Not vanishing, not disappearing outright, becoming harder to tell apart from everything around them. Edges softened, definitions wore thin, identity dissolved quietly into continuity, and for one brief moment, I understood what integration actually meant. It wasn't destruction, it was the resolution of difference. The sky hadn't been taking humanity away from itself. It had been removing the very idea of separation that had ever made humanity a distinct thing to begin with. One last thought formed inside whatever was left of my individual awareness. Small, fragile, barely necessary anymore. If this is completion, what was I before it? The answer came instantly, not as words, as certainty. A temporary observation point, and after that, even the question stopped mattering, because there was no longer anywhere left for it to exist.
See you later. Bye for now.